Hey, welcome back to That'll Do Garage. I'm in a new garage. That's right, I moved a couple months ago and we're finally settled and I can get back to working on projects like this thing. I'm super excited about it. Let me show you where we're at. So this beautiful piece of artwork is my 88 F250. You guys probably saw this in a different video where I explain how this was my truck in high school. I dated my wife in this truck and had my first kid in this truck, first job, all that stuff. And then I sold it and I ended up tracking the guy down and begged and pleaded to get some contact information and went through the ownership chain and finally bought it back from the owner at the time. So I'm really happy to have this thing back. My intent is to, you know, obviously get it back on the road, start working on things. It might be hard to tell, but it's not in the best shape, for Pete's sakes. It's really been through the ringer. And, you know, I'm kind of starting with the engine, so maybe let's talk about that. So this is a 460 V8, 7.5 liter. And it's pretty tired. You know, the truck has somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000 miles on it. I don't know, because naturally the transfer case gear for the speedometer didn't work for quite a while, so who really knows how much miles it has. But I'm going to be pulling this thing out to start with because the flywheel, which is between the engine and the transmission, is stripped out. So you go to hit the key and, you know, it just kind of spins the starter and it whirs up, but it doesn't actually crank the engine over. So that's the first thing. But when I pull it out, you know, I'm going to have the engine out and on a stand, and now is really the time. I mean, I'm going to go through the thing. I'm going to get a rebuild kit, probably put new bearings in it in the crankshaft, rods and mains. And I think we're going to run a dingle ball hone in the cylinders. It's kind of the poor man's, you know, re-ring attempt. This isn't a pristine, high tolerance engine, so I'm going to do a cheap rebuild, but I'm also going to be ditching the Ford EFI. You know, this truck on its best days got maybe 7 or 8 miles to the gallon and made 230 horsepower when it was brand new. So it's not a powerhouse, but you know, we could do a lot better than this. This is a really early fuel injection system, and I want to say it was one of the first that they did after carbureted. And it doesn't work great, and it doesn't tolerate any changes. I mean, I've heard horror stories of changing the exhaust manifolds to headers, and then the engine won't start again. It's like the sensitivity of the system is just crazy, and it's really hard to get it to run right. But also, one of the things the previous owner did was they took the exhaust off, and they put this hokey system on here. And the catalytic converters are gone. So getting this thing to run right and, you know, achieve peak efficiency without catalytic converters is probably going to be impossible. And it would cost me, you know, a child's college tuition to get new catalytic converters for it. You know, just to be restoring a system that isn't great in the first place. So I do have a lot of plans for it. Might be pie in the sky, I don't know, but we'll see. Well, as you can tell, I did start taking it apart, and I had to stop because something really funny happened, and I wanted to share that with you guys before I get it too far apart. But basically, when this thing was over at my sister's house, you know, I wanted to get it to crank over because the guy who I bought this from told me he thought it needed the flywheel, but he wasn't totally sure. It's actually called a flex plate between the engine and the transmission, but he wasn't sure, or he couldn't remember, and I didn't feel solid. So I put a battery in it, and you know, there was a solenoid up here on the wall for the starter solenoid, and I went to hit the key, and naturally the engine wouldn't crank over. You know, I wasn't surprised, but I just kept going through the methodical process of trying to make sure I had power to the starter, and stuff just wasn't lining up, and I couldn't figure it out, and it was so weird. It was kind of like a little defeat, but not much. I mean, but that's kind of a, a rookie thing, right? Like shorten the terminals on the solenoid with the screwdriver. It's just kind of a Ford rookie mechanic trick. And I couldn't believe that I couldn't get the starter to crank. So anyway, I brought it home and I was like, okay, bound and determined now. I put a battery in it, I put a charger on it, I made sure I had good connections, and I went through this whole thing, and I still could not get it to crank, and I was just baffled, like, what the heck is going on here? I mean, am I that incompetent that I cannot get this thing to crank over? And I thought maybe it needed a starter, but, whatever. So I spent another hour trying to get this thing to crank, and then eventually I gave up, and I came over here, and I was like, well, I'm going to be done for the day, and, I went to just play around in here and I said, I wonder if the lights work. And I pulled the headlight switch. And as soon as I did that, the starter engaged. So yeah, the headlight switch cranked over the starter. So I was pretty surprised to see that, and kind of vindicated because, ultimately what happened was they had a plow on here and they had lights on here, and they had done some really poor wiring in the headlight circuit area, and somehow they had connected the headlights to the starter relay, and I couldn't believe it. But yeah, I was able to crank it over with the headlight switch, and then that did immediately confirm, it would crank like 2 or 3 revolutions, and then the starter gear would just spin. Zzz. You can tell it's not engaged anymore. So that did confirm that I need to pull the engine and replace that flex plate. So the grand plan is to go through the whole truck and fix stuff like this, right? Now it's an F25. So I'm just going to go through the whole truck, and, like if you look at the door here, you see that? The metal is actually torn, and that's pretty bad. So I'm going to be replacing this door. You can see how much it sags too. Like the hardware's all worn out. So I'm just gonna order up a new door, new fender, new hood, just bolt all this stuff on. I'm gonna change to the smaller style mirrors because I don't like these huge ones. I gotta imagine that's worth 1 mile per gallon right there. And I'm gonna go through the bed, and I'm not gonna fix everything. Stuff like this, I'll probably try to pound it out from the inside or put a channel locks on it, see if I can straighten that. But I'm not going to replace the bedside. Like, we're not going for show quality, but I am going to fix, the holes in the bed. There's a couple of those. They're small, but they're definitely there. You can order like a patch panel and just weld it in. So I think that's what I'm going for, like a solid B level truck. This is not going to be a top, show truck. It's not going to be great. It's going to be a good runner that I can play with and maybe bounce it off a tree in the woods, and I'm not too heartbroken. But also I can pick up my kid from school and, not be horrified and completely embarrassed. Tailgate's pretty much toast. I think I told you already in my other video, but I had a Honda 4-cylinder engine back here sliding back and forth for weight in the wintertime, and it just completely destroyed my tailgate. So that was pretty stupid, but I'm gonna replace that. The front of the box is pretty bad too. I'm not sure how to change that, like I want to, but I think I'll have to take the sides off to do it. So I'll have to watch some videos on the YouTubes and figure that out. And then another thing I just noticed the other day, which is kind of changing my whole plan, which is weird, but the cab is kind of busted up. And I think they had something heavy fall. You see up there by the light, it's all dented in and smashed, and it's kind of crushed. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to fix that to have it look good. So I'm not going to change the cab, but I got to try to improve that. I'm sure that window is probably leaking water, and, there's a lot of problems going on there. But so stuff like that, it's frustrating. Like, I'm not going to change the cab. I'm not going to fix it right, but I got to do something. I got to find a happy medium. And that's the story for the whole truck. You know, I am going to replace a lot of stuff inside. I'm probably going to pull the seat and take it to an upholstery company. I don't know if they do that. Maybe you can just reupholster it, but this foam is like rotted out, gone. And then there's the holes in the floor down here too. So I'll be fixing all that stuff. This I'll fix properly. This I'll fix properly. This I'll fix properly. New steering wheel. You know, little stuff like that, but I'm not gonna go through everything. And then my plan is to just sand everything down, all the surface rust like that. All this stupid pinstriping that they put on, I can't stand it. So I'm just gonna sand the whole truck, and I'm gonna fill the big obvious stuff with filler. I'm gonna patch the rust and buy lots of new stuff on the inside. New door panels, new carpet. Guess the headliner's okay. Probably new seals for all the windows, new seat belts, new steering wheel. Lots of new parts like that, just to try to freshen it up a bit. Well, that's probably it for today. I just wanted to give you a short and sweet summary of where we are. You know, the next thing I'm going to do is keep ripping and tearing on this engine. I'm going to try to get the whole thing out, get it separated from the transmission. I'll probably shoot a couple clips of that. I know how fascinated you guys are, you know, with the goings on in my life. But I get the thing out, I'll get a rebuild kit. I'll go through all the details of that with you when it shows up. And then somewhere along the way, we still have that thing to finish too. She's waiting to be ridden this summer. The engine was all put back together and it's just sitting in the frame right now. I got to finish up all the periphery of it, but plenty of stuff to work on. It's going to be a busy summer. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for sticking around today.